Let's start round the back, because the background for this photo session is just a sheet of A1 sized foam core. It's got red fabric on it and then a red balloon in front of it, and that's being lit by a single flash. Then I've got two flashes either side to put a bit of edge lighting on Sophie, and Sophie's being lit by a single flash just above her head and off to the side. Now my camera is way back over here, and the final picture looks like this. But of course, it didn't start here, so let's rewind and break it down. With fashion photography, there's some misconceptions. For example, you need a huge amount of space. You need endless backgrounds to choose from, and you need really high-end fashion items. Well, today, we're gonna make portfolio-worthy images by breaking all of those rules. But the thing I've got in my huge advantage is I've got the incredible Sophie as my model. Let's talk about backgrounds first of all. So this is going to be the entire background for the whole photo session. It's a piece of A1 sized white foam core. Now A1 size is 33 inches by 23 inches, more or less. And what you're thinking is, it's not white. Nope, I've covered it in red fabric. I could have painted it, but I was too cheap to do that. So this is going to be the background. I've got to fit everything inside of this. I can always turn it vertical if I want some vertical pictures as well. Now, before we go any further, we need to take control of the ambient light. So I've dialed in some default settings. I've gone with f8 for a reasonable depth of field. I've got 250th of a second, my flash sync speed, ISO 200, and at those settings, no flash gives me this, no picture. The bit that holds this together is probably the high fashion fine art neck and shoulder piece that Sophie is wearing. But in reality, it's just 3 lengths of 5-meter silicone tubing, and Sam's gonna wrap them around Sophie's neck and shoulder to create the illusion of something that is expensive, when in reality, we actually got these from the DIY store. Let's talk about the lighting. This is actually going to be a 4-light setup, although the first 2 are exactly the same. 2 edge lights to put a little bit of detail around the edge of Sophie. But that means I've got to think about where Sophie is going to be. Now, at the moment, she's stood up against the background. And if I take a picture like this, it's fine. There's loads of room with plenty of background for Sophie to work in. But if I need space to put those edge lights in, I need Sophie to step forward. So if you can just come take a couple of steps forward, and now if I take the same picture from the same position, suddenly the background looks considerably smaller than it did before. Sophie no longer fits on that background. I need to think about my lens choice and something called compression. What I'm going to do is actually step backwards, or at least bring my camera back, which in my small home studio isn't really that much difference than it was before, but it will make a difference to the picture, because now if I take the same picture of Sophie in the same place against the same background, I now have the background covering Sophie, and once again she's got room to move. But I know what you're thinking. Well, you can see an awful lot of space around Sophie, and that's why I'm going to be using a zoom lens. So I can zoom my lens in, frame up my picture, and actually take the same picture like this. Now you might have thought compression is because I'm using a longer telephoto lens, but in fact it's the distance that's giving me the compression of Sophie against the background. My longer lens is just helping me to crop. Bonus tip. So let's talk about the lighting, and I'm actually going to start not with the key lights but with the edge lights. And you might think that's a bit strange, but there's a reason for that. I want to get the light right on the edges of the tubing. It's a fashion looking thing. I want to make sure that that really pops out. So I've got 2 hard light sources to give me nice crisp little point sources of light, and well, Sophie's going to be in shadow, which is where the key light's going to come in, but maybe not as much as you think, which is another reason I'm doing it this way round. So if I test the lights, I can see how much light is on Sophie and how much light is on her face. I've got them set to roughly 1 stop below what I'm actually shooting at, so there's still a little bit of detail in their highlights, but they are quite bright on purpose. For my key light, I've got another Evolve 200 Pro. This is actually the Mark II, and it's in a 12 by 36 inch strip box from Glow. That's a nice little controllable light, but the position of it is going to be absolutely critical. Now I've placed it directly overhead, which, spoiler alert, isn't really the right place because it gives me light like this, which is perfectly okay, but there's no shape to it. It's really flat lighting on Sophie. So actually what I'm going to do is move it backwards. Once again, it doesn't need a huge amount of an adjustment to make a big difference. So I've pulled it back to the side, and now, well, let's see how that looks. Same settings, nothing's changed. But now we have some shadow and shape to Sophie's face, which is really important because it gives 3 dimensions and depth. So there's one more light to add in, and I guess I could call this one the optional light because it's just going to light the background. Now there's already a bit of spill from the key light onto the background, so I don't have to put it in, but I'd like a more even red. Now getting a good red is harder than you might imagine because if you have this light too bright, you're going to lose the red color. And even if you get it almost right, but just too bright by a little bit, it goes pink. So it's always better to be slightly under with your backlight if you have a red background. However, if you get it right, hopefully this is right, it should look something like this. So now I have a much more even illumination on the background, although I've got a few ideas with the background which we might try as we go along. But this is the basic setup done. So I think we should take a few photos like this. Sophie, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. The red background was the basis for the entire look, so I've got red tubing on Sophie's shoulders. Sophie's done her makeup with red lips. We've got red headphones for Sophie to interact with. In fact, the only thing I don't have that's red is Sophie's fingernails, so I won't be including those in the final pictures. Keep the high fashion, low price idea going, my alternative background is just a large red balloon. I've put it on the background and I've put the background light directly onto the balloon, so it just glows and it looks amazing. In fact, you really wouldn't know that this is a cheap, basic background. So that went really well, and yes, I did make my life deliberately more difficult than it had to be with the A1 size background, but that's all part of the challenge and all part of breaking the rules. Sophie did fantastic, and this low cost but amazing looking neck piece really made the whole pictures come alive. Now, if you want to find out more about the gear I'm using, you'll find links in the video description down below. Whilst you're down there, why not give this video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already done so, click on the subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey, thanks for watching.